Roller, wouldn't it?
I know.
Well, for the second time in 2 weeks, Treasury Secretary Timothy Geithner has lost his pick for top deputy. Fox News has learned that H. Rajan Cohen has withdrawn his name from consideration for the #2 job. Even as the financial crisis deepens, key positions in the Treasury Department remain vacant. Why can't Secretary Geithner fill his top post? And is the staff shortage crippling his department just when the fate of the entire country rests on his decisions? Chris Stirewalt is the political editor for the Washington Examiner. And Chris, I mean, let's face it, unemployment's at 8.1%, 12.5 million Americans unemployed, and the Treasury Secretary can't get anyone to work for him.
Well, certainly there would be applicants for the jobs, you'd think. But, no, I mean, in truth, these are very difficult jobs to fill, to be fair. Not only do you have to be able to handle all of the things that are rolling out of this administration right now, because remember, you've got bailing out General Motors and Chrysler, you've got the bank bailout as it's taking shape, you have re-regulating the financial sector, you have all of this stuff that's going on, and now we're talking about an international sort of bailout, $100 billion for world bailout. But let's be real. These are difficult jobs to fill because not only do you have to be up to that work, but you also have to get past all of the rules and regulations that you have to comply with to be ethically up to snuff.
Sure, but let's face it. I mean, the Treasury Secretary hasn't exactly come out of the gates with all engines firing here. I mean, the taxes, the whole thing, and the Wall Street Journal coming out recently and saying that both the president and Tim Geithner had failing grades. I mean, how much impact does that have on their decision-making process?
Well, one thing that we can probably be very sure of is that the administration must now be looking at Secretary Geithner as a political liability.
Right.
In terms of delivering the message, he does not do well. He had a bad rollout on the bank bailout package. He's struggled every time he goes on Capitol Hill.
Well, there was no bank bailout package. That was the whole problem. I mean, you say rollout, a bad rollout. I mean, I talked to some bankers who looked at it like, you know, and the market, by the way, that day, I think it dropped, what, 300 points or something. And bankers were thinking, wait a minute, there was no plan. There was no there at all.
No, absolutely. That was the major complaint was that there wasn't anything to roll out when he came to roll it out.
Yeah.
But when you come out of the box, as you mentioned, with a problem on your own tax returns, and from there he's sort of continued to flail. The problem for the administration is that he is their point man on the economy. They can't get these positions filled at Treasury. People are starting to have grave misgivings. Both Democrats and Republicans on Capitol Hill are starting to have grave misgivings whether or not Geithner is able to pull this off and bring all these pieces together. And unable to fill these slots, it just sort of deepens that concern.
What about the top slot? What about the slot that Timothy Geithner holds right now, Chris? Does he make it? Does he last?
Well, you know, it would certainly destabilize markets to a certain extent if you were to push out a Treasury Secretary in the middle of a recession or at sort of as the recession is still finding bottom. But what has to be considered by the Obama administration, and we know that they're willing to make these kinds of moves, is at what point does it outweigh, are those concerns outweighed by the knowledge that people just don't have confidence in it?
Chris Stirewalt. Chris, good weekend.
You do the same.